Everyone, in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to do some basic editing here in Lightroom. We're going to go over the editing panel as well as the presets panel. If you're just learning how to do the edits, go ahead and keep watching the video. If you are following along as an assignment, make sure that you follow all of the different steps that I do, whether you're using your own image or one I provided for you. So the first thing I did was go ahead and make an album for this assignment, Editing Basics. And from there, I'm going to add in an existing photo that I already have, and I'm going to drag and drop it here. Okay, if I've given you a photo, make sure that you import it into this album. All right, now in this album, we're going to be doing a couple different things. And for each of the different types of edits we're going to create, we're going to be doing that with this same photo, but basically make a copy of it. That way we can see all of the edits individually. So this first image, we're going to leave as the original because I want to see what the original looks like compared to the edits that you make. So we're going to right click on the image and we're going to duplicate it. And duplicate it just means that we're going to make a copy of it. So let's leave this first one here completely unedited. That's our original. And we're going to work here on the second image. Now this second image, we're going to start actually in the cropping tool. So go ahead and head over to your toolbar. And on the toolbar, you'll see your crop tool. Go ahead and click on it. Now the crop tool has a lot in here. And I'll show you how to use all of it. But here's always the things you're going to check for. The first thing we want to do is we always want to make sure that our aspect ratio is on 2:3. Now the aspect ratio is basically the dimensions of your photo. How tall is it versus how wide is it? And 2:3 is a great one to stick with. Unless we do other projects where I ask for different ratios, that's going to be our normal one, 2:3. It's the same ratio that your camera uses. So let's go ahead and stick with that. Now, before I do anything else, I'm actually going to get rid of this little background detail. I don't like that you can see the table here. So I think if I just grab the corner and bring it in, we can get rid of that because I find it to be a little bit distracting. And now we have more focus on our image. All right, from there, another thing to check is the straighten option. Straightening your photo is really important, especially when you have vertical and horizontal lines. And as you can see in my photo, I've got quite a few of both, especially here where the board game ends. So there's a couple ways you can straighten. So you can use the slider here by clicking and moving. And notice it gives you a grid. That way you can kind of see to make sure that your lines line up with the grid. You can also kind of hover next to, like right outside your cropping and like click and drag that way. Either way works totally fine. And again, just making sure it's straight. Now you have other options here if you needed to rotate or flip your image. In this case, I don't, because if I rotate it, it'll be upside down. And if I flip it, the words will be backwards. But if you're in need of doing so, you can do so here. By the way, forgot one detail here with cropping. Right now, my image is horizontal. If I wanted for any reason to switch this to a vertical image, there's a little option here on the top, which lets you switch between vertical and horizontal. Okay, now I'm going to stick with horizontal. So let me go ahead and set this back to the right size. There we go. Alrighty. Now what's great about Lightroom is that as soon as you click out of a tool, it'll automatically save for you. So let's go ahead and go to the tool above the crop, which is our editing panel. And notice that it automatically saves that cropping that we did. Okay, now we're going to do a few more things here in the editing panel. Now I'm going to close some of these tabs out so you can see all of the different things that your editing panel can do. It can adjust light, color, add effects, change details, and adjust optics. There's also a new version, which I'm not sure you guys have access to, called Lens Blur, and we can try that out a little bit later. So with this image, we are also going to be looking at the lighting in the effects section. So let's start with lighting. One really easy way to improve a photo is to adjust the lighting. Lighting plays such a big part in a photo. So by adding a little bit of brightness to a photo that's maybe a little bit dark, we'll just kind of make everything stand out, easier to see, and just pop. So I'm going to adjust my exposure a little bit by clicking on the slider and bringing it up. Now, if your photo is already really bright, you might need to turn down the exposure. But in this case, I'm feeling like it's a little bit dark, and I'm going to bump it up there just a little bit. Now we have other options here. We could add contrast, which is basically going to make the dark areas darker and the light areas lighter. As I slide it around, I don't really care for that effect. So to reset this, I'll double click in the circle. I think other ones that we should look at always is our whites and our blacks. All this does is that this white slider is going to basically brighten any of the whites already in your image. And the black slider will, again, darken or brighten any of the blacks in your photo. And by having really dark blacks and really bright whites, really just help to show better details. So that's just a little bit of a slight adjustment. You don't want to overdo any of these sliders. You can also adjust some highlights on the photo or shadows, but I'm going to go ahead and leave that as is. Let's also go ahead and look at effects. I'm going to drop down the effects panel and show you what a couple of these do. So texture is going to add texture. It's literally going to make it look maybe kind of grainy, and that could be a cool effect, but I would say for the most part, you don't usually want to add a lot of texture to an image because it will make it look like it's a less quality image. So I'm going to reset that. Now clarity is a really interesting slider. The higher it is, the more detail you can usually see, whereas if you make it go to the left, you can actually take away detail and get kind of a hazy effect, which both options are really cool. I'm actually kind of liking a little bit of a hazy effect with clarity. If I just lower that just a little bit. Again, don't overdo these sliders. All right. Now dehaze here is going to dehaze your photo if you go towards the right, and the opposite effect towards the left. I'm not really liking either one though, so I'm going to reset that. And then vignette is a great one to do. Now, I don't care for sliding it over to the left because it's going to brighten the edges of your image, but sliding it, or to the right, but sliding it to the left is going to add a little bit of darkness on the edges of the photo. You're usually never going to want to make it this dark, but by doing just a little bit, it brings your eye a little bit more towards the center of the image, if that's what you're going for. All right, there's not often a time where we're going to want to add green to a photo. As you can see, it just adds this texture, which can make a photo look really old if you're going for a more vintage effect. But mostly, it's going to make it look like the image quality was very low. So I'm going to keep that at 0. All right, and that's our first photo. So anytime you're doing basic edits, this is the great place to start. Start with cropping, straightening, as well as adjusting a little bit of your lighting, brighten the image, darken the dark areas, brighten the light areas, and then you have the option to darken the edges with vignette, or adjust maybe some clarity or dehaze your image. Alrighty, now look at the difference between our original and our edit, and even though we didn't do a whole lot, there still is a big difference. That second photo really pops. All right, now we still have actually a lot of things to do in the editing panel, so we're going to go ahead, this second image here, the one we've edited, let's go ahead and duplicate this. We've done a great job adjusting the lighting, so let's go ahead and make a copy. And with this third copy here, remember we've got original. All right, we did lighting and effects here. So for this one, we're going to basically adjust some color. So let's go ahead in the color area of the editing panel, drop that down. And there's actually a lot of different things here. You've got a white balance temperature gauge, color mixer, point color, and color grading. I'm not going to show you all of them, but I'll show you a couple. Let me close some of these out. So we're going to start with the white balance temperature. So anytime that your photo is leaning a little bit warm, everything's looking really yellow and orange, you would take the slider here and nudge it a little bit towards the blue, because the blue will help to balance out the yellow so that the things that should be white in your photo are actually white instead of yellow. If things are looking kind of blue, like you see here, you would want to nudge this over to the left. That way it balances out the whites. You never want your photo to look too warm, like this, or too cool, like this. Now in my case, I don't think I'm having either problem, so I'm going to keep that in the center. You might also have issues of things looking warm in kind of a reddish way, and you can balance that out with green. Same thing with if things are looking a little bit on the greener side, you can balance it out with some magenta. I don't think I have either of those issues, so I'm going to leave it. Now you can do some overall vibrance of color, which as you can see here, adding a lot of vibrance is maybe a little bit too intense, but it will kind of up your colors. It basically is adding some light to the color. Whereas if I go to the left, it's taking it away a little bit. I do like a little bit of vibrance, so I'm going to go ahead and add just a little bit. Don't overdo it. Saturation is going to intensify your colors, and you can see how wild that can look if you up it too much. If you bring it all the way to the left, it's actually going to make your photo completely neutral, take away color, which we're going to do later on. So let's go ahead and leave this with saturation kind of in the middle. Alrighty, now color mixer is really cool because what you can do here is you can kind of click on general colors. So let's say I click on red. I have a lot of reds in my photo. If I want those reds to start to lean purplish, notice there's a slight change, right? Or maybe towards orange. So a similar color, not too different, I can start to make it just slightly different. Now here's where you don't want to get too crazy. Now I don't have a photo of a person here, but if I had a photo of a person and I was adjusting oranges, well, some skin tones are kind of an orange color. If I intensify that with saturation, or if I change the color from, you know, an orange or skin tone to like purple, we're gonna make people look crazy, and we don't want to over edit. So make sure that you go slow with these and just do small adjustments if you're looking to just change the color. For this assignment, I'm gonna have you change the color in some way. So for me, maybe with the red, maybe I lean it just a little bit more towards orange. Okay. Slight difference, but it's just kind of learning how to use these. Now, I actually like point color for changing color more specifically, because what you can do here is if you click in this area here where it says select a color in the photo, I'm going to click on the little eyedropper, click on the little eyedropper, there we go. And then if I click on an area in my photo, so let's say like maybe this like kind of like bluish purple color, if I click on it, notice it shows up here, and then basically I can change that exact color. Do I want that color to look more, more like a teal? I like that with the orange. I think they work really well. I could also adjust just the saturation of that specific color, or just the luminance of that specific color. That way, this one's the color mixer is a little bit more general, and the point color is you're choosing an exact color to change. So make sure that you make some sort of adjustment, but that it doesn't look over edited or something that would be unnatural for whatever it is in your photograph. All right, you guys, that looks great. We're gonna go ahead and we're actually gonna go back to this second image. So remember, we've got original, the one where we edited lighting and effects, and then we just did one with color, right? There's a slight difference between those two. Let's go back to the second one and we're gonna make another duplicate. For this photo here, we're actually going to learn how to make an image black and white and how to edit a black and white photo. So we're still in our editing panel and we're going to go up to the top. Notice it says B&W. B&W stands for black and white. So let's go ahead and click on that. It's going to remove all the color from the photo, but notice that my photo looks very gray. Usually when you're using black and white, or if it says here monochromatic, that just means one color. You don't want to have just all these like very medium gray tones. We want to have really dark grays or even black in our photo, as well as really light values like white or really light grays. So we're actually going to come back to this lighting panel and we're going to do some adjustments. So if you want to bring up the exposure, you can, but I think that it's still good from the last edit we did. What I'm thinking we adjust here is actually maybe some of the highlights. So brightening some of those areas where it should be brighter, and maybe darkening some of the shadowed areas. We could pump up the whites here, and notice what that does. It's adding what's called contrast. Having a dark value next to a light value is going to make that dark or light value really pop and stand out. So that's what I'm looking for here. So the edits might be a little bit more dramatic than what we did with the color. That way we can really get some dark values and some really bright light values. Okay, and to be honest, I think that's it. I just did a couple edits here in the lighting area once we change it to black and white. Beautiful, it has great contrast. All right, last thing that we're going to do is that we're going to go ahead and do one more duplicate. So let's go back to that second photo and we're going to duplicate it. Go ahead and select it. And we're actually going to get out of the editing panel for now. So go ahead and click away from it. And this time we're going to go into presets. Now beware when you click on presets that this is all through like AI and the internet, so it might go a little bit slow. So keep in mind that it might take a little while to load. Okay, And what you should see first is there's a recommended section. That's the section we're going to focus in. Basically, Lightroom's AI has scanned your photo and is trying to think, okay, like what edits do I think will look good? Now, keep in mind, presets are basically like a filter that someone else has made. So you can actually hover over these recommended ones and see like what it looks like on your photo and see if you like it. Now, I want you to keep in mind that presets can be adjusted. So if there's something about a preset you don't like if we liked this photo, but we didn't like the vignette, the dark corners, we could change that. So we're going to look through them. Now, if you don't like any of them, you can go up to the top here and start to organize them in a way. Like if you want to go for something that's more bright or something that's cinematic or something that's a little bit just a subtle edit or even a strong edit, you can go ahead and categorize them. But I'm going to choose one here that I like. Now, when I say like, we're looking for a preset that is not taking away detail. It's not making it harder to see what's in the photo, because sometimes, like this one, we're going to get maybe too much contrast. That texture really makes it look like really low quality. So that might not be my best edit. So pick one that it makes your photo look good, bright, good colors. All right, I actually kind of like this one. I know the colors are very different. And so I'm going to go with it, but I think I'm going to make some adjustments. So I'm going to click on it. Now, if you like this one, but you're looking like it's not perfect, we could click more like this. And Lightroom is then going to give us some more options. So if I wasn't super happy with the first one, it can give me ones that are similar, although I don't think these are that similar. Okay, so I'm going to go with the first one and select it. You can actually choose here like how much of it you want. It gives you like 50%. And you're like, oh, if I don't like it that much, you can lower it if you want more of that effect. Now, this would be not a great edit. This would be way over editing. Notice that you lose a lot of detail in the photo. So make sure that you're not picking an edit or intensifying it too much. So I'm going to keep it at the middle here, this 100, and I'm going to get out of the presets. Now remember that presets are adjustable. If you like it the way it is, you can keep it. Otherwise, we can go into our editing panel and you can actually see in all the different sections what whoever created this preset, what they did, right? They turned up the exposure, the contrast, lowered the highlights. So they did a lot of these edits, but keep in mind that you can adjust. If I really wanted to add some vignetting to darken the corners a little bit, I could do that. So go ahead and make any adjustments you want. And now I'm hoping you feel really comfortable with doing some basic edits in Lightroom, which include cropping and straightening and rotating, adjusting the lighting, the effects, and the color of the photo, learning how to use presets, as well as creating black and white photographs.